Which brings me now, Mr. President, to the recommendations of the committee. The Committee of the Whole consolidated in this report all the inputs, particularly the recommendations submitted by the following senators: Senator Pampilo Lacson, Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri, Senator Franklin Drilon, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III, Senator Grace Poe, Senator Francis Tolentino, and Senator Cynthia Villar. Considering all the findings of the Committee of the Whole that this representation just presented, we therefore recommend the filing of criminal charges against the following. Number 1, Attorney Rodolfo De Rosario Jr., Senior Vice President for Legal Sector, and all other Philhealth officials and employees as may be determined by the Department of Justice, who connived with and participated in the consummation of the punishment illegal act, particularly for their failure to act upon and or neglect of duty to cause the prosecution of cases before them. Article 208 of the Revised Penal Code, prosecution of offenses, negligence, and tolerance. Violation of Republic Act 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Number 2, Ms. Jovita Aragona, Senior Vice President for Information Management Sector. Mr. Calixto Gabuya, Jr., Acting Senior Manager, Information Technology and Management Department, and all other Philhealth officials and employees who connived with and participated in the consummation of the punishment/illegal act, particularly for their act of overpricing IT supply and the concealment alteration of documents pertaining thereto. Article 171 of the Revised Penal Code, falsification by public officer, employee, or notary, or ecclesiastic minister. Article 213 of the Revised Penal Code, frauds against the public treasury and similar offenses. Article 226 of the Revised Penal Code, removal, concealment, or destruction of documents. Violation of Republic Act 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, in violation of Article 2 of Republic Act 9184 or the Government Procurement Reform Act. Number 3, Secretary Francisco Duque III, Chairman of the Board, Brigadier General Ricardo Morales, former President and CEO, Mr. Arnel De Jesus, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Renato Limsiaco Jr., Senior Vice President for Fund Management Sector, Mr. Israel Francis Pargas, Senior Vice President for Health Finance Policy Sector, and all other Philhealth officials and employees who connived with and participated in the consummation of the punishable illegal act, specifically for their improper and illegal implementation of the IRM, the Interim Reimbursement Mechanism, against its duly authorized purpose under the law, and for their grave abuse of discretion or gross negligence in ascertaining the IRM beneficiary without valid criteria for distribution. Article 217 of the Revised Penal Code, malversation of public funds or property. Article 220 of the Revised Penal Code, illegal use of public funds or property. Violations of Republic Act 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Number 4, Mr. President, Secretary Francisco Duque III, Chairman of the Board, Brigadier General Ricardo Morales, former President and CEO, Mr. Arnel De Jesus, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Renato Limsiaco Jr., Senior Vice President for Fund Management Sector, Mr. Israel Francis Pargas, Senior Vice President for Health Finance Policy Sector, and all other Philhealth employees and officials who connived with and participated in the consummation of the punishable illegal act, specifically for their failure to withhold tax liabilities of healthcare institutions to which they released IRM funds, and for their act of charging the corporate operating budget for failure to withhold the taxes in the advancement of funds through the IRM. Article 217 of the Revised Penal Code, malversation of public funds or property, violation of the National Internal Revenue Code, violation of Republic Act 1051, violation of Republic Act 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Mr. President, in addition to the criminal charges that the committee recommends to the Department of Justice and the Ombudsman, we also recommend to the DOJ and the Ombudsman to file against PhilHealth officials, employees, administrative cases. This committee likewise recommends them to file administrative case against Brigadier General Morales and SVP Dennis Mas, Management Service Sector, for not implementing the board resolutions on courtesy resignations, which is clearly a neglect of duty and insubordination. File administrative case against General Morales, Executive Vice President and COO Arnel de Jesus, and Mr. Arnel de Jesus, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, for violating COA rules on the period of liquidation in issuing Memorandum Circular 2020-032. File administrative case against Attorney Rodolfo Del Rosario, SVP for Legal Sector, and all other officers and employees of the Protest and Appeal Review Department of PhilHealth for failure to act in gross neglect of duties relative to the cases pending in their department. Ensure that the administrative and criminal cases are timely filed against responsible individuals, healthcare institutions, and corporations. Filing charges against responsible individuals, healthcare institutions, and corporations will prove PhilHealth's and the government's commitment to ensure that government funds are not mismanaged and that corruption is not tolerated. Further, cases and subsequent convictions will serve as a deterrent for others with corrupt intentions. Given the observation of the B. Brown Avitum Philippines Incorporated, evidence for ghost patients must be sought after. The report recommended that this can be done by retroactively matching the latest death data from the Philippine Statistics Authority. And also recommended to PhilHealth. Here are some of the committee's recommendations. Immediately require from the healthcare institutions which received IRM funds to liquidate the utilized IRM funds and return the unutilized amount. Impose a definite deadline, therefore, and strictly implement the same. For PhilHealth to immediately pay the claims of private hospitals, prioritizing those which are COVID-19 referral hospitals and those with high cases of COVID-19 admissions. Increase the involvement of the COA in PhilHealth in every stage of operations of PhilHealth. As revealed in the hearings, the Commission on Audit is having a hard time in auditing PhilHealth due to the difficulty of obtaining documents from PhilHealth. Central Office, lalo na. So COA should be allowed to pursue its mandate to conduct the necessary audits even at the regional level without any hindrance from PhilHealth to ensure that government funds are properly managed and spent. Outsource The IT services of Philhealth. Philhealth should simply outsource to a reputable company the provision of its IT services, which include but not limited to development and provision of a reliable electronic health records and analytics system, specifically for membership data information collection and membership services. For PhilHealth to contract out the processing of its benefits claim to avoid backlogs and massive reimbursement delays. This would simplify the reimbursement process, remove red tape, and address corruption. The Senior Vice President legal sector must have at least 5 years of legal practice or have held a public office requiring admission to the practice of law as an indispensable requisite. Also, for the high-ranking officials of the PhilHealth Insurance Corporation or the Philippine Insurance Corporation, starting from the Chief Executive Officer to the regional vice presidents, to file their courtesy resignation in compliance with the board resolution in relation thereto, and to be able to give the President of the Philippines a free hand to appoint new officials for the people to regain its trust on PhilHealth. For PhilHealth to implement a regular reassignment of its regional vice presidents to a different region every 3 years. No regional vice president should be reassigned to the same region more than twice in his or her entire tenure in PhilHealth. For PhilHealth to strengthen its enforcement and legal division in the various regional offices to help expedite and ensure the success in prosecuting cases, whether pending in PhilHealth or those filed in regular courts or quasi-judicial bodies. As for the Department of Budget and Management, Mr. President, the committee is calling for the DBM through its procurement service to execute the necessary procurement in PhilHealth's stead on the latter's information technology needs, whether hardware or software. Another recommendation of the committee that will provide additional layer of protection to ensure PhilHealth will be financially sound and solvent and that transaction fall within acceptable parameters is for the Insurance Commission to be involved in scrutinizing the operations of PhilHealth. For the GOCC, for the Governance Commission for GOCCs, I should say, as the governing body for government corporations, the committee urges it to actively and decisively perform its mandate as a central advisory, monitoring, and oversight body of PhilHealth. In particular, it should identify the necessary skills and qualifications required for appointive directors to the PhilHealth and consider the suitability and qualifications of the candidates before submitting its recommendations to the President. The fit and proper rule should be strictly applied. The directors must be chosen based on their integrity, experience, education, training, and competence, among others. Take a proactive role in evaluating the performance of PhilHealth, its directors and officers, and discipline them if necessary. Conduct periodic evaluation and assessment of the performance of the PhilHealth. Require reports on the operations and management of the corporation, particularly on the management of its assets and finances as provided. Recommend appropriate measures to improve PhilHealth's overall performance and service delivery in accordance with its mandate, based on its most recent performance scorecard. And last, for the GCG, we call on them to conduct a special audit for PhilHealth's finances, possibly in the last 5 to 10 years. The committee is likewise seeking the Anti-Money Laundering Council for it to immediately investigate and determine whether the bank accounts of those PhilHealth officials and private entities that have been implicated in the malversation of PhilHealth funds fall within the category of the so-called suspicious accounts. And also, Mr. President, for the various Senate committees. The Committee of the Whole has provided for a number of recommendations that are contained in this report that we expect could be timely acted upon. In closing, Mr. President, our country is in dire straits. Gross domestic product shrunk 16.5% from a year ago, according to the National Statistics Agency, the worst reading in a data series going back to 1981, and that is a fact. The pressure on government finances becomes even greater as we try to implement the Universal Health Care Act, which aims to cover all of us. Philhealth is in a deep hole as well. How deep, we are not certain yet. Unless we discover the real state of Philhealth finances, we will never know. And that lack of knowledge is something all of us can ill afford to have. High unemployment caused primarily by the closing of businesses due to COVID-19 will result in fewer individuals from whom PhilHealth can exact premiums. That is another blow to PhilHealth, Mr. President. As if that is not bad enough, PhilHealth is hemorrhaging because of inefficient running of the corporation, compounded by corrupt practices inside. Fortunately for us, the latter two causes are preventable and can be solved by us. We must thus exert our utmost authority and vigilance to rid PhilHealth of undesirables and punish to the fullest extent of the law criminals. Less than this we cannot allow. Our suffering people deserve nothing less. Mr. President, public service demands total honesty from its public officials and employees. And may I add, using the classic admonition by the ancient Romans, they must not only be pure and honest, but also perceived to be pure and honest, like Caesar's wife. Thank you. Good afternoon, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President.